A pleasant day for everyone. This is Teacher Cristel Ibarbaza introducing the topic Critical Discourse Analysis. So, before I proceed, I would like to ask, have you heard of the word discourse? What is the exact meaning of this discourse? Before I proceed, I would like to ask, have you heard of the word discourse? So, what is the exact meaning of this discourse? So, discourse is a verbal interchange of ideas, especially a conversation, formal and orderly, and usually extended expression of thought on a subject. So, meaning to say, it is simply, it is simply that we are talking about in an utterance. So, discourse analysis, on the other hand, or the discourse studies, is an approach to the analysis of written, vocal, or silent language. And it is used in any significant symmetric event or semiotic event. So the objects of this discourse is, of course, the analysis are variously defined in terms of coherent sequences, sentences, propositions, speech, or the turns up talk. Since we're talking about an utterance, a conversation, and the language occurrences. So I'd like to talk to you about critical discourse analysis. By now, you know the term discourse, of course, meaning language in use beyond the level of the individual word or even the individual sentence. Therefore, this discourse analysis is the analysis of such language. And critical here is should bring to mind the term power and the relationship between the term language and power. So CDA, or the critical discourse analysis, is concerned with how power is expressed through language. So it is a type of discourse analytical research that primarily studies the way the social power, abuse, dominance, and equality are enacted. So meaning to say, it is concerned with the social inequality and the social cultural factors that affects the language use or the meaning in an utterance. So we're talking about the level, intensity of the wordings or the text that we're using in a context. The second is that critical discourse analysis take explicit position and thus want to understand, expose, and ultimately resist social inequality, especially in a generation we're living right now. We have to be careful and filter our words before saying so. And before we converse to someone, we should organize or collect our thoughts first and make sure it is acceptable and comprehensible for everyone. Meaning to say, this critical discourse analysis ought to understand the social cultural context of the meaning or the intended meaning of the text in an utterance. Okay. The critical discourse analyst will going to analyze if the text or the language you use is acceptable and does not embody stereotypes and prejudice. So Norman Fairclough focuses on this critical discourse analysis, and according to him, these are the tenets of critical discourse analysis. The first one is this CDA addresses social problems like gender inequality, racism, body shaming, etc. So, especially for those people who engage themselves in social media. So, this CDA focuses and enlightens the text should be formally and orderly organized. So the second one is discourse constitutes society and culture. So when we are using, so before we converse with someone, make sure that our language use and so make sure that the language that we are going to use is comprehensible to the or to our audience. It is also important to be familiar with the cultural boundaries so that gaps in discrepancies will be avoided. So then Third one is the discourse than ideological. Conversing with people or with individuals in your environment takes a lot of work. So the tendency is that you have to think things through, and you have to filter, or you have to weigh the intensity or the level of your context before you say something. So the intended meaning can affect the relationship you have with someone. So number four is discourse is historical. So we are all familiar with it, as we are all familiar with, as your past instructors discuss about the regional or the dialect. Instructors discuss about the regional and the historical context of specific language. So meaning to say, it is historical in a way that it is being passed through generations to generation through what? Oral tradition. So discourse analysis, again, is interpretative and explanatory. Since this discourse is varied from individual to individual, so the interpretation is up to the speaker and the audience in the utterance. Next thing is that this discourse is a form of social action. Discourse is a form of social action in a way that language is the one of you're using. Never be voice out our concerns, our worries. And it also helps us to build the social relationship with other people, and to acquire language learning through engaging yourself and exposure, and of course the interaction that you have with your environment. So Norman Fairclough has developed a model for critical discourse analysis, and this model consists of three categories. So this model is called the three-dimensional model. The first model would be the text. So the text could be speech, writing, images, or a mixture of all three forms of communication. So it is an analysis at the word level. Again, at the word level. So when we say word level for this, just like for this example. So my neighbor is an old witch. So the second sentence would be, my neighbor is an old woman. So at these sentences, we can observe or spot the sameness and differences about these two. So my neighbor is an old witch is used for what? And my neighbor is an old woman is used for what? So an old woman is being replaced, or an old witch is being replaced by an old woman. Since we are talking about the word level, we can observe that when we are using formal context or formal speech, we can use the second sentence, which is my neighbor is an old woman. If when we are expressing anger, sarcasm, annoyance, or irritation, we can use this, my neighbor is an old witch. So, meaning to say, this text aims to analyze the difference or the sameness at the word level. Or not necessarily the sameness and differences. We can just spot how it is being different and same at it with one another. So meaning to say, word level, we are talking about the intensity, the weight of the word in the context. When we are conversing with someone, of course, we have to weigh things or collect our thoughts before proceeding, right? So the tendency is that we are going to replace the word that is, for example, when we are expressing sympathy for someone, of course, we have to change what we have in our mind that we think is inappropriate to utter. So we will replace it with some remarks that shows sympathy and sorrow, something that is comforting to hear. The second model would be discursive practice. So this discursive practice is that analysis takes place at the text level. So it also deals with the relationship between the discursive practice of production, interpretation, and the text itself. So at this step, we analyze institutional practice. What are the media domain and the political domain? So why do they use such aids? And what is their basic target? So meaning to say, in this discursive practice, if in text we have our input, in this discursive practice we have the process. So we are weighing things accordingly and orderly. So it is not just about the word level. It expands. It talks about a lot of things. In this discursive practice, we're able to learn the practices, or the not just the text level, but also the processes, the learning materials, or the channels that the speakers and audiences may use in the communication process. So it deals with the relationship with the process of production. So it deals with the process of production, interpretation, and the text itself. So meaning to say, we are not just talking about the text level or the wordings that we are using in a context or in a conversation, but also the process and the practices that we need to attain before conversing with someone. So discursive practice includes all the aspects that we need to. So discursive practice includes all the aspects that we need to acquire in the communication process. So the third model is the social cultural practice. So of course, when we are conversing with someone, when we are talking to someone, it is a must that we consider their cultural background, their social cultural background, so that we know what are the appropriate in the context, or we know how to respond without offending them, without feeling them uncomfortable. And of course, this social cultural practice deals with the relationship between production, interpretation, and social conditioning. So there are factors that affect the speaker and the utterance, as well as the audiences. You have to make sure that you have to make sure that the context that you're using is what the audiences and both the speakers and audiences is comfortable sharing. And in this last step, we examine how our society limited together and which things influences our society. So meaning to say, this social cultural practice is very much important in communication process, because we need to know, we need to surpass the dilemmas that we might face in an occurrence, and as well as filling the gaps and decrease the discrepancies of people that the ideologies may vary from individual to individual, to countries. So we can attain a great communication and process if we are able to understand and comprehend the situation of the context, as well as we can be comprehensible and acceptable to the community that we belong. So again, this has been Teacher Crystal Barbasa. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something from me. That's all for today.